David Harding here. I'm on the River Dart on Truffle Hunter, a Sigma 33 co-owned by Mark Hasseltine, who has had this boat since 1985 and has done a lot with it, including winning the Sigma 33 National Championships, the Europeans. I in fact did the Nationals with him in Cowes on this very boat in 1989. And on an earlier Sigma 33, Mark did the 1982 Round Britain race. So this is his second Sigma 33. This one is 37 years in his ownership, and before that he had the first one for a number of years too. So Mark knows his Sigmas. He's also done a lot of other offshore sailing, including a Villamora race in some pretty hairy weather, and crossing the Atlantic, or not quite crossing the Atlantic, on another boat which had a slight issue with the keel parting company, and so they had to abandon that west of Bermuda. And that's another story altogether, but Mark certainly knows his Sigmas and knows his sailing, and I've spent a bit of time on Sigma 33s as well, and look forward to getting to know this one. Or reacquainting myself with this one, I should say, and actually looking at it in a non-racing context, because this boat, former national and European winner, is now a fully fledged cruising Sigma 33. Of course, there was a Sigma 33 cruiser with a masthead rig. This isn't one of those. This is the original racing Sigma, but with a number of modifications now that make it into a cruising boat. And in fact, the boat has been extensively refitted over this past winter, well, the winter of 2021 to 22. So let's have a look and see what the boat is now like. Start at the bow. Roller reefing. That's not a standard feature on Sigmas. And it's a Harken system. And here's the overhanging pulpit, which you don't see on modern boats now, where minimising marina length is what it's all about. And looking aft on deck, some non-slip here to supplement the built-in and moulded non-slip. Inboard rigging, which reminds us that the boat goes back before the days of rigging taken to the chain plates as a matter of course, so taken outboard. So the chain plates are well inboard, so you can walk fast outside them. Racing fittings here, which are also very useful for cruising, of course, are towing Genoa cars, so they can be adjusted from the cockpit as you roll the Genoa in and out. The sails are only a few years old. The racing laminates have been replaced by Dacrons, and the mainsail with luff slides as opposed to a bolt rope. And nothing particularly unusual as we walk back on deck. Slotted aluminium tow rail. Main sheet here just taken off the Harken windward sheeting car and taken outboard to the tow rail to create space in the cockpit. And back here is the windward sheeting car, the traditional Sigma backstay system. Sigmas used to be well known for having a lot of rig tension applied, to the extent that you were deemed not to have the boat set up properly if you could actually open the head's door. That was your marker. If you could open the door, the rigging was too slack. here we have a sizable cockpit locker and engine on off down here too. So this is the helm zone abaft the traveller, and then there's plenty of space for crew forward. Gas locker here, and life raft stowage here, which also makes a useful place for keeping the halyard tails and any other bits that you don't want floating around in the cockpit. Then we have handholds either side of the companionway, hatch garage with instruments, narrower stern than on modern boats, but a lot beamier than some of the IOR designs that preceded it. So that's a rocket tour around the deck. We will have another look when we're out sailing, and we will also have a look down below in a little while. Aboard on Truffle Hunter, we can see that she is in many respects a fairly standard Sigma 33, but with some fairly significant differences. If we start at the bow, roller Genoa for a start. She was raced pretty competitively for a good number of years, and of course had the twin groove headfoil, but this boat is now very much in cruising vein, and up there, which we can't quite see, is the Royal Cruising Club Burgee. Roller Genoa, new sails recently with the roller reefing system, Harken roller reefing sails from Dartmouth's local sailmaker, Dart Sails. And as we work our way aft, there's the boat's sail number on the deck, harking back to her racing days. Reefing, points reefing of course, but not led aft. A traditional system with reef spectacles taken down to ram's horns at the tack. And another mod that Mark made back in the racing days was to fit towing Genoa cars. And back in the cockpit here, he upgraded to self-tailing winches when the boat was new. So we got Blumar 43 self-tailers. Yeah, the Harken Traveller was fitted for racing and was a great boon then, but it's not so great for cruising because it tends to flop around a little bit. It means the car can slap from side to side when you don't want it to, so a bit of a mixed blessing for cruising. And then the old lever style backstay, and towing cars back to here, back to the cockpit, and perfectly good cockpit for cruising, as long as you don't mind the traveller across the middle, but it's in the right place for the helm and plenty of space forward for trimmers. So from a functional point of view, the cockpit works well and the winches are mounted fairly well inboard, so the trimmer doesn't need to lean out too far to shoot the headsail in. So that's pretty much it on deck. Centre hatch here, forward hatch, reasonable non-slip pattern on deck with some extra hatches down here which will help the mast man when jibing the pole. Vents in the fore hatch and the coach roof forward of the mast, and then back to the bow. Anchor locker and single anchor roller and conventional pulpit with a bit of overhang, as they were back in the days when minimising marina length wasn't quite the priority it is now. Heading down the companionway, which has nice, easy, fairly steep but easy steps. We find ourselves in the saloon with a drop leaf table, pilot berth on the starboard side. Have a quick whiz round first. Galley to starboard. Here are the companionway steps. Quarter berth to port. Chart table with the head of the quarter berth as the seat in the traditional manner. L-shaped seating to port can be used as sea berths, and then forward the traditional arrangement with the heads and a hanging locker, and then the fore cabin. Just turning around and looking the other way, there we are, the view aft. So in a little bit more detail, chart table about 3 feet wide, good size, a couple of feet long, good hinge up lid here with decent chart stowage, as used to be the way, and a fair amount of space for nav kit. Quarter berth here, over 6 feet long, stowage on the hull side. And then we have shelves and lockers outboard. No interior mouldings in most of the boat, so easy access to the hull sides for maintenance and plenty of stowage. Tankage, port and starboard. Galley here, 2-burner hob and grill, and oven, sink, cool box, a fair amount of stowage. Grab rails along the deckhead, one here. Grab rails along the deckhead, one here as well, midway along the window. Headroom is pretty good, over 6 feet in the main part of the saloon, a little bit less as you go forward, drops just below 6 feet. Soft vinyl headlining and vinyl to the sides of the coach roof. And yeah, drop leaf table here. Sections of sailboard lift up. There's the shallow bilge keel bolts. Sailboards very shiny and new here because the boat had a major refurb over the winter of 21-22, and the interior woodwork was revarnished. The boat had been raced pretty hard, so it was getting a little bit tired, and now looks pretty fresh for a 37-year-old boat. Then heads and hanging locker opposite here. Moving forward to the bow, fairly generously proportioned fore cabin, berth well over 6 feet long, removable infill section, so you can make it into 2 separate berths and some lockerage outboard, and a good size forehatch, and handholds where you need them. So a pretty serviceable arrangement. During the Nationals, when I was aboard in '89, we did some overnight racing. It was short overnight racing, so we were actually sleeping on the boat in Cowes, so we don't think we actually had to sleep offshore, but we had to come down below and do various things when we were offshore, and it's an arrangement that does actually work pretty well out at sea. So there it is, the Sigma 33 down below, still pretty roomy and with an arrangement that is perhaps some might think dated because it is of an era, but it still works very well indeed. We had a really lovely day when we went sailing on Truffle Hunter. Nice gentle easterly breeze, typically in the range of 8 to 12 knots and just a slight sea. So really benign conditions, but enough breeze to get the Sigma slipping along nicely at over 5 knots upwind. Boats like this are so easily driven that they don't need to be pushed hard. They get going very easily, even with, in this case, a smaller head sail, which most Sigma 33s that have been converted to cruising form will have. They will have roller reefing head sails, which obviously makes them smaller anyway and easier to handle. And without the weight of a full racing crew on the rail, you're relying on the ballast and the keel, so you'll never carry the canvas in the same way that a boat would in racing mode. But we all know what they can do in heavy weather. That's been proved many times. I've sailed in a lot more breeze than this on this very boat, so their performance is really a known quantity, and they are nice, responsive, enjoyable boats to sail. And it was great for me, as someone who was brought up on the Dart and who spent many hours over many years sailing on the river and in Start Bay, to be there again and sailing with 2 people, Mark, who owns the boat, and Bill, who came along with us for the day, who I've known for many decades. So a lovely day, great company, and a very nice boat.